That's the sound of the police. Whoop, whoop. That's the sound of the beast. Whoop, whoop. That's the sound of the police. Whoop, whoop. That's the sound of the
beast. And the kind of behavior we saw this evening. Don't do it. If you do, your trip to the beach will end up with a trip to jail. At this time, I'll take a few questions.
Chief, would you categorize this large gathering as a team takeover?
You can phrase it however you want. Team takeover, meet up. It's all organized through social media.
Is it under control out there now?
It's calming down, yes.
When you describe a large influx, I mean, are we talking dozens, hundreds, over 1,000? What was that looking like?
It was reported to me there was hundreds of people out there. Described as a spring break.
I think some of the best parts of this press conference is, first of all, he's like, don't do it. What are you, Joe Biden? Don't. What do you got to say about Iran? Don't. I'm just dumbfounded. I mean, then, you're going to get a trip to jail. How many arrests did you make? No, they're not going to go to jail. I remember working under Holloway and we had a problem and no one went to jail. In fact, when we did try to arrest a couple people, one of the lieutenants came out and goes, the chief just wants them off the beach. It was pretty fierce looking. I mean, you watch those videos, that's not spring break. I'm sorry. The deputy chief just, he's just trying to cover his own ass, I guess. But that did not look like spring break to me. But then again, I tell my 19-year-old not to go down there half the time because you got problems like this. A bunch of freaking thugs on that beach. All right, so you saw the first video and then you saw the press conference with Deputy Chief Wallach. It's no secret. I can't stand that man. He is one of the most toxic human beings I've ever met. So we're going to go over the shooting that happened on Clearwater Beach during this teen takeover this past weekend. Now, I'm gonna give you a disclaimer here. When I started this channel, I promised myself that I would not bash my former agency. I've made a couple digs here and there, but I wasn't going to bash my agency because I have a lot of friends at that agency. I respect a lot of people at the agency, and there's really good cops there. Unfortunately, there are some bad apples there. But I got a phone call yesterday yelling at me about a post on Facebook where I replied to somebody's comment about the intel and how things folded out. And I said that there was an intel failure. Now, when I said that, I was talking about, like military people talk about intel from the beginning to the end. So from the first minute you hear about the intel to the last minute that a decision is made on what to do. So there's many people involved in that. Okay, not just one single person, not one single department. But because someone wanted to call me and try to bully me into changing my opinion and then hearing people talking shit in the background, guess what? I'm gonna fucking bash my police department. I'm gonna tell you some of the things that I know. Like the fact that Clearwater Beach, when you patrol that beach, you get beat up as a patrol officer to focus on FIRs, field interview reports, and open alcohol. Don't go out of the way looking for drugs. Don't go out of the way looking for guns. I have a friend of mine who was a sergeant that ran the anti-crime team on the beach who was told that their open alcohol stats weren't high enough anymore. And when he said they were focusing on some intel that they had on violent stuff, they were like, no, we want you open alcohol. And then that deputy chief got his eyesights on him, on that sergeant. He ended up getting freaking demoted, and then he ended up getting medically retired from the police department. But then they wanted to drag him through a lot of shit to get his medical appointment. And this all stems from not Chief Gandy. Okay, Chief Gandy, I think, is going to change his police department around. But Chief Gandy was handed a bag of fucking turds. Okay? Dan Slaughter and Tony Holloway, the two former chiefs. So when I got hired, it was Sid Klein. Great chief. then Tony Holloway, then Dan Slaughter, and now Eric Gandy. Now, Tony Holloway and Dan Slaughter, they destroyed this agency. In the 20 years I worked here, Clearwater crime rate was higher than the national average. It was only like 2 or 3 years that our crime rate was lower than the national average. But yet, when I left, we almost had the same amount of cops that were on the street 20 years ago. They really didn't boost the numbers. But they would promote their buddies, their flunkies. Holloway promoted a lot of flunkies, and so did Slaughter. Now, that's not saying every person that was promoted didn't deserve it, or everyone that got promoted isn't worthy of it. But I'm saying that Dan Slaughter promoted flunkies. Wallach is a flunky. He is one of Slaughter's flunkies. There's several of them out there, including the one that's stirring the pot with a friend of mine who keeps typing on Facebook, replies to him, but then immediately deletes it because he doesn't want to be seen on Facebook because he's a wuss. He can't stand up for himself. And hey, if you all remember, everyone at Clearwater, let's remember something. My last 6 months at that agency, I worked at the body camera redaction office. I saw what some of you people do, which is amazing. For some of the shit that I got written up for, I've seen guys do some horrible shit on the body cameras. In fact, the sergeant that's stirring the pot right now and angry at all of us, I saw on multiple occasions where he didn't turn his body camera on, which violated policy. But, they're not going to do anything, okay? Because he's one of the flunkies. He's one of the ones that will toe the line. He will not stand up and say, no, that's not right, okay? Perfect example. Once I got my degree, once I graduated college and I got my degree in criminal justice and homeland security, I started realizing that we were doing a lot of things wrong at the police department. Like, perfect example is there's a thing called field interview reports where police officers make contact with citizens, but it's normally meant for suspicious people. Like, you roll up behind a closed business at midnight and you find a guy sitting there. That's a perfect example of an FIR. You interview that person, you get their information. So now burglary happens after you leave. The detectives now can look at that and go, well, we're going to go talk to this guy. But they focused on it so badly at our agency that they had quotas. Oh, I'm sorry. Clearwater management calls it expectations. It's a fucking quota. It's a quota. And this all came from Dan Slaughter and Holloway, right? Oh, you're not doing enough FIRs. I had one lieutenant actually tell me, just go out, drive through a neighborhood. When you see someone walking their dog, stop them and FIR them. What? Yeah, that was a lieutenant that told me and my squad that. Just FIR a guy walking his dog. No, that's wrong. That's fucking wrong on so many levels. Because one, when you stop the guy can tell you to go fuck yourself and there's nothing you can do about it. Because you have no reason to stop him and interview him. He hasn't done anything. And then, and you'll hear me say it throughout my video, they focused on open alcohol so much on the beach that they were blinded to everything else. But this is what the city has always done. They have always focused that Clearwater Beach has no crime. And I can tell you, I've seen more than my share of it out there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go over some of the videos to just show what I see and what I see as a failure in some aspects. And I'm probably going to ruffle some feathers. I mean, I ruffled feathers just a day ago. I'm probably going to ruffle some feathers. I'm probably going to lose some friends at the PD. But you know what? At this point, it's not worth sitting here being quiet. Somebody has to say something. Someone has to call it out and say, listen, you can say all you want that you responded properly. You didn't have an ops plan, because that if you had an ops plan, it was probably one of the worst ops plans I ever heard of, because you screamed for help from the SO and Largo, and then you emptied the whole city except for one squad all the way by itself in Countryside, covering the whole city from the Intercoastal Waterway all the way to the Gulf of, to the Tampa Bay. You left one squad doing that. I think Wallach talks about we had 40 officers. If you knew that there was a teen takeover, 40 officers weren't enough. You can see it from all the other videos from all around the country, which is amazingly enough because guess what? Since then, multiple agencies have seen the flyers about their teen takeovers and they've stopped it. They've put their men out in force and stopped it. So it can be done. It's just, and I guarantee it's because the agency was worried about optics. The city was worried about optics. Instead of worrying about the safety of the tourists, the families, the businesses, and their own officers, they were worried about optics. And that, my friends, is a Dan Slaughter remnant in this agency. He always was worried about optics. Well, how's it going to make me look as the chief? Who cares? You have a job to do. All right, so let's roll into those videos. Okay, we're going to look at a video here of a close-up on the shooting, okay? Now you can see these kids right here. They're all ganging up on this one kid. And what does he decide? Well, you brought fists to a gunfight. Pop, pop, pop. So that's the shooter right there, okay? Can you imagine the families and the tourists in those cars seeing this? This is Clearwater Beach, you know, #1 beach, you know, so many damn times. There's a false sense out on that beach that it's 100% safe. I worked that beach for 5 years. I've had friends that have worked the beach for years. They've always tried to say that the beach is safe. There's no crime out there. I remember when I first got hired, it was, oh, you're going to go to work the beach. There's no crime out there. You're not going to be a real cop. Trust me, there are tons of stuff going on there that the city just doesn't want to acknowledge. All right. We'll get back to another video. Let me show you this video because this brings up a big question for me. All right. Being that I worked the beach for so long. This is Pier 60. Okay. This is the main hangout at Clearwater Beach. This is the main area. You come down the causeway, you hit the roundabout, boom, there's Pier 60, right? You got the Hilton up to the north of it, and you got sand and beach, and then you have a little place you can get food down to the south of it, and then there's some other hotels, right? I want you to look at the parking lot, right? The parking lot. Clearwater Beach is infamous for having parking issues. You know, you come down there on a busy weekend, you can't find parking. It's hard. Look at the parking lot. The parking lot is empty. It's empty. Why? Why is it empty? Because the families already fled. The tourists already fled. They saw what was coming. Okay? They knew what was coming. So they fled. Now you got a police car up here, right? Active fight police car up here. So these kids are actively fighting. There's a police car right up here. Now, I'm not saying that cop's not doing his job properly. I don't know what the orders, there he is right there. I don't know what the orders were that came down. Probably back off, let them do whatever they want to themselves and try and disperse the crowd. But I'm telling you, this is an active fight. Look at this. That's an active fight. And there's a police car and no police officers are getting involved. No police officers are doing anything about this fight. And it keeps spreading this way. And then there's a police car sitting right there. No officers outside. No officers trying to disengage the fight. Now, a police car sitting here at night, there's no active fight. They're just gathered around. So this is them saying, hey, we're here. Okay? But that was an active fight. And the police car sat back. Again, oh, I'm sorry. Look at that. That's 2 patrol cars. 1, 2. Nobody breaking up that fight. Again, I'm not second guessing those officers because I don't know the orders that were given to them, but I do know that you're sitting there, people are seeing you sitting there and you're not doing anything. That doesn't give a lot of trust from the tourists and the families. And again, that parking lot is empty because they fled. They saw what was coming. They knew what happened in Jacksonville. They knew what happened in Chicago. They knew what happened in Daytona Beach. They knew what happened in Rhode Island. This is not new to the country. Okay? They claim, Deputy Chief Wallach in his video claimed that they knew what was going on. They may have known, but they didn't react properly. All right. Because they're saying it was in the hundreds. The videos I'm looking at, they're looking more and more like about you're close to 1,000. Look, I mean, people are just running in front of the cars. Look, they're fighting next to the fire truck, you know, right next to the ambulance. Not a police officer to be seen. No one breaking this stuff up. They're self-regulating the fights, you know. So we used to have a thing, and I think they still do. It's called Wild Splash, right? Which is a big concert that's held in downtown Clearwater. And we know what kind of people show up there, you know, and we used to have ERT on duty. We would have people with their patrol rifles. We would have SWAT on duty. We'd have undercover on duty for a concert that we had planned and knew about, had to deal with traffic and all that. You had an ops plan. And every spring break I worked on the beach, every time there was some kind of incident that was rumored through intel, there was an ops plan. There's no way in hell they had an ops plan for this because they didn't have ERT mobilized or ready or standing by. They didn't have their transport wagons. So the Clearwater Police Department has 2 vans for transportation of prisoners. Didn't have them pre-staged on the beach, which we did all the time during spring break. Didn't have plainclothes officers. And when the shit hit the fan, they had to call officers from downtown to help. And then when they couldn't help and it got so out of control where the police CADS menu says that there were things being thrown at police officers, they had to call Largo Police Department and Pinellas County Sheriff's Department to come help them. And then they left the rest of the city to one squad that works out of countryside. So don't tell me you were prepared. I know this chain of command. And like I said earlier, I don't know where the failure came, but there was a failure. So now we're going to watch this video. This is just a guy walking by in Pier 60 again, right? That's Pier 60. Where are the cars? And this is another part of the shooting. You know, and you see, these are Largo police cars coming from Sand Key. Largo. We had to call for Largo. So you're telling me you're prepared, but the videos aren't showing it. I'm sorry. It eventually went into the night. I mean, look, this is nighttime now. You know, it's dark. You got kids running all over the place. Think about if you were staying in one of these hotels. And by the way, the sheriff department, their CADS menu said that there were hundreds of teens trying to break into one of the hotels. Right here's the Surf Style. They trashed that place. It's just, it's amazing how you can say the police department did a great job. Okay, we'll go back to this video. We don't need to see this one. All right. And again, I'm not hammering the patrol guys and some of the sergeants out there. I'm telling you, they didn't respond properly. If they truly had intel on what was going on, they didn't respond in the way they should have. All right. So I'm going to bring up this video. Pause. Because I got to. All right. I'm going to put down the volume a little bit, but I want you to listen to what these people have to say here. All right.
Check back. Well, the person responsible for shooting a 17-year-old during a
Let's go back. I'm going to show you something. Let's see if we can go back. Okay, watch this.
Thanks, Sally. We'll check back.
You see that right there? That's one of the paddy wagons. That's one of the transport wagons that we have. That was not, based on what I was told from somebody who worked that night, that was not positioned on the beach.
Well, the person responsible for shooting a 17-year-old during a teen takeover is still on the run.
That's right, Clearwater.
Yeah, and funny enough, the one that was shot supposedly is the guy that was the person who created this teen takeover. And that's exactly what it is. It's a teen takeover. The deputy chief can play his game about, oh, you call it whatever you want. It was a teen takeover. It was a breach of peace. There should have been felonies for a lot of these kids.
Police say that they did arrest another 17-year-old from Brandon who was armed. Investigators say they got calls last night about large crowds of teenagers gathering across the city.
Why are you reacting to calls from citizens when your own police officers should have noticed that? They should have saw what was going on and started preparing for something to go bad. I'm not saying that you gather that many people and it goes bad, but again, all these other cities have had the problem. You see it starting to get that way on the beach. Maybe you should start making calls. I'm not saying they didn't, but the way it sounded is you didn't react until citizens started complaining, when you should have been proactive and reacted immediately when you started seeing it. And then I'll show you a video where, Uncle Bob, the sheriff, says, well, you can't just do anything when they start gathering. Yes, you can. You can when you notice certain types of behavior, right?
And causing problems. This all comes 3 weeks after Tampa police arrested 22 people for this so-called teen takeover at Curtis Hickson Park in downtown.
Again, happened over in Tampa. So we should already know how to respond to this.
Down Tampa. And tonight, our Clearwater and North Pinellas County reporter Robert Boyd speaking with businesses and visitors to learn the consequences.
Okay, now this is where it's going to get, right? Because they're saying the chain of command of both the sheriff's department and Clearwater is saying, oh, we did a great job. Everything was smooth. Watch what the citizens and the business owners have to say.
Consequences of this trend and what it's doing to tourism industry.
Well, I spoke with several businesses along Clearwater Beach who said they actually had to close up a couple hours early, costing them potentially thousands of dollars because of this teen takeover and shooting. They say there's only one word to sum it all up: frustrating. We got word that there were shots fired and big crowds of big groups of people running around, getting in fights. Salty Island manager Justin Miller told me the only reason he can ever remember for closing his restaurant early was for a hurricane. But now you can add teen takeover to the list. We lost a couple hours of business because of the situation.
Yeah, that's real fair to the business owner, right?
And when we were turning people away, we were telling them, like, hey, either go back home or to your hotel rooms and stay safe.
So even this guy's smart enough to say, hey, you guys got to get off the beach. Get away. It's not safe.
A 17-year-old ended up being transported to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries after being shot on Coronado Drive, just a block away from Sammy Hannock's new store, Aloha Beach Shop Inc. Sammy also decided to close his doors early.
Very frustrating. Closing early is losing money, and that's not...
This whole city relies on tourism, and that beach relies on tourism. When I first became a beach cop, and I worked for Lieutenant Wayne Andrews, he made it clear that we needed to make sure that everybody was comfortable and enjoying themselves on the beach because of the 10 rule. If someone leaves Clearwater Beach, goes back to Wisconsin and says, oh, I had a shitty time, or the cops were rude, or the businesses sucked, they're going to tell 10 of their friends, they're going to tell 10 of their friends, and then tourism goes down the toilet. And if you want to stay the #1 beach, you got to keep the tourists happy. You got to keep the businesses happy.
Something that we want. We don't want this for our customers.
One of those potential customers is Sherry Carpenter, who is visiting from South Carolina. She told me her family had plans for dinner and music until they heard shots fired.
We decided the best and safest place for us last night was in the hotel and not to leave. And yeah, it's unfortunate because that was one day of our vacation that we kind of lost out on.
Does this change your view of Clearwater, specifically the beach?
No, it does not, because this can happen anywhere.
Well, she's true, and she's right about that, and good for her. And I applaud her for saying that, because it does. It has happened all over the country right now.
Really.
As for these businesses, they say it's a shame. They must spend the first week of summer vacation defending one of the most beautiful beaches in the world.
Thanks for coming, okay? beautiful place. Come on over. This has just happened one time. I'm sure it's not going to.
Well, it hasn't happened one time. I mean, he's new, and I'm not going to bash him, but, 20 years at Clearwater Police Department, that has been the worst one, but it's happened all the time. They've had shootings on that beach during Memorial Day weekends. They've had issues on spring break. In fact, the surf style was destroyed inside a couple years ago, I think on Memorial Day weekend. So it's not the first time this has happened. It's just, it was way bigger. And that's the other reason why it was such a bad response. We've had issues before and they didn't prepare properly.
Happen again.
Yeah, it's very safe down here. And for something like that to happen was kind of like a shock to people, really.
In Clearwater, Robert Boyd.
All right. I got another news one. And then we're almost done with watching videos.
A teenager shot following a teen takeover. You're watching Tampa Bay News at 5. I'm Frank White.
And I'm Courtney Robinson. The shooting on Clearwater Beach over the weekend put a 17-year-old in the hospital. And right now, investigators have plenty of questions. Chief among them, who is the shooter? 10 Tampa Bay News reporter here.
My question is, why didn't they respond properly? And again, the parking. But then again, when you see the videos, you see how many people. How the hell did they all get there? Okay, you're looking at, I'll be nice and say 700 kids out there. That parking lot was empty. How did all these kids get there? Where are all their cars? I mean, it doesn't make sense to me.
Eric Glasser, as you can see, is live there for us on Clearwater Beach tonight. And Eric, you have reaction from police, from visitors, and local businesses as well.
Hey there, Courtney. Yes, let's start with Clearwater Police. The latest update from them is that they still have a teenager in custody on weapons violations, but they don't necessarily believe that that teenager is the shooter in this. And so that person, they say, is likely still at large tonight. Nobody, the city of Clearwater, local businesses, nor visitors wanted this to be the way that the busy summer season began out here. Violent videos now being seen.
Yeah, no one wants this. But it happens, and you have to be prepared for it to happen.
Around the world. What started as a summer afternoon on one of Florida's most popular beaches, quickly turning into chaos. Images now all over social media showing crowds running in panic as gunshots ring out near Clearwater Beach's busy beachfront district.
Look at all these kids. Police car right there. Again, not saying he's not doing his job, just the reaction of the police department compared to the days when we worked and we would have issues out on the beach.
You can phrase it however you want. Teen takeover, meet up. It's all organized through social media.
Police say-
Again, he's placating it. He's like, it's not really, it's a social media thing. Look at this police car and look at all these people. That's an issue. And if you knew that this was happening, you should have had more bodies out on that beach to show a force. They could have just sat in their cars every block, but a show of force. Show the tourists, show the businesses, show the families that you're there to make sure that this doesn't happen. But they didn't.
A fight broke out shortly before 5:15 last night near Coronado Drive in the...
I'd love to find out the stats for the day on how many open alcohol citations they gave. Because I'm going to cover that. I'll talk about that later.
Area, at least one bullet striking a 17-year-old.
His injuries are not thought to be life-threatening.
Investigators say hundreds.
Look at this. Look at this.
So what was being promoted online as a beach meetup or teen takeover, Clearwater police say they knew it was coming, describing the response along with other agencies as perfect.
Through our threat management unit, we had been aware of a planned gathering at the beach today.
If you were aware, I was an ERT member. I don't see the response. I don't see an ops plan. When I worked for Joe Young, Lieutenant Joe Young on the beach, we had ops plans for things that we had intel about stuff like that. He was our ERT commander. Most concerts, most times that we got intel about something going on at the Blue Chip, which is an old bar up in Greenwood, we had ops plans. their ops plan is either non-existent or very weak. And I guarantee the reason why is because the color of the participants. The city was afraid to make it look like we were racists.
Our officers are trained to deal with this type of situation, and this type of situation was perfect because they handled themselves accordingly.
Perfect because the officers handled themselves accordingly. You know what that means? They didn't tase people. They didn't spray people. They didn't engage. They didn't make arrests. Just in that one parking lot video, there should have been at least 20 to 30 arrests. They didn't arrest anybody. They let them just beat the snot out of each other.
Bill, that's not the way several visitors and businesses have described it.
Well, there are no such thing as perfect people, only people with perfect intentions.
The now viral images raising questions about whether the incident could influence people's decision to visit Clearwater, just as the busy summer travel season gets underway.
I hope it doesn't deter people from coming to Clearwater Beach because of an event like that, an isolated incident.
I feel like more people would be skeptical about coming to Clearwater.
We still love it here. I can't say we would come back, but I did, that's what you let them all on edge, and people might change their mind.
Clearwater Beach is family friendly. It's safe. This is a bunch of kids acting like kids.
No, they're not kids acting like kids. They're thugs acting like thugs. And that mentality placates it and diminishes the fact of people felt unsafe. Kids acting like kids. Come on, somebody got shot.
And I'm telling you, it will not happen again.
Oh, it will happen again. I guarantee it. Because they didn't freaking respond properly this time. It'll happen again because it's happened before. Here's the last video I got. Oh, no, I don't. I got this video. This is going to be fun. Two of the biggest douchebags in Pinellas County. Let me tell you something. Let me get to you, right? This guy right here, Deputy Chief Wallach, is one of the most toxic leaders in Pinellas County law enforcement. If you were to look up toxic leader in the dictionary, it'd have his picture there, him smiling about it too. He targets people when they don't agree with him because, it's his way or the highway. Now, I said it earlier about Chief Gandy is, I believe, is probably the best position right now. He's the perfect person to be the chief of police of Clearwater. He's tactical-minded, patrol-minded. But this guy is a flunky left over from the Dan Slaughter days. Okay, Dan Slaughter ruined Clearwater Police Department, and Dan Slaughter is some of the reasons why I don't believe they responded properly, because when Dan Slaughter retired from the chief of police, he's now the assistant city manager. So he's still got his little fingers in everything. But the problem that Chief Gandy's having with that police department is because Dan Slaughter ran it into the ground, promoted flunkies that were really not truly qualified, and not everybody. There are some good sergeants, there's good corporals, there's good detectives, there's good lieutenants, but there are some flunkies in there that don't belong. This is one of them. This man goes after people. He went after me. He went after my friends. He is a toxic human being, but he's a flunky from the old days. When Gandy took over this agency, it had problems. I mean, right as soon as he took over, the FOP union president and narcotics undercover officer got arrested by this guy for funneling information about Pinellas County deputy undercover narcotics officers to drug dealers. Not to mention, I think also when Gandy took over, there was an investigation of a police officer having sex with a person in custody. A lot of the problems with Clearwater that Gandy's trying to fix are because of Dan Slaughter, who ran it into the ground. But we're going to continue. And I could talk shit about Bob all day long too, because Bob is not the greatest guy in the world either. He's on the Republican ticket. He is more liberal than any Republican I've ever met. He has created things at his department that has made it harder for police officers to do their job and enforce crime. But let's just listen to what he says. This is actually the press conference for when Grady Judd got the bad guy.
Clearwater Beach was taken into custody with the assistance of the Polk County Sheriff's Office. Thank you to Sheriff Grady Judd.
Yeah, go Grady Judd. But I heard from some friends that the kid's family turned him in, probably because they know he's not truly going to be punished. But Grady Judd is a way better sheriff than this guy.
Ridge Crime Suppression Unit for their assistance. Noel Marsh III has been charged with attempted second-degree murder, discharging a firearm in public, and unlawful possession of a firearm by a minor.
By a minor, because he's 16.
He is in the Polk County Jail, and he is 16 years old. Through the hard work of our personnel in the Real-Time Operations Center and our detectives, Marsh was identified as a suspect early in our investigation. That led us to Polk County, where he resided. This senseless act of violence occurred between two groups known to one another. A dispute started between the two about a month ago in Winter Haven. On Sunday, there was a fight earlier today that occurred before the shooting. Investigators learned from the victim that the dispute largely stems from social media and party-related rivalries. The suspect refused to talk with detectives.
Shocker, he doesn't want to talk to detectives because they know what they were going to do.
The 17-year-old victim remains in the hospital with non-life-threatening gunshot wounds to his leg, his arm, and his chest. We believe the suspect fired 7 times. We are fortunate.
7 times, only hit him 3 times. But he was, it's a moving target. I'll give him that.
The victim or bystanders were not killed in gunfire.
Yeah, when you saw that one video from the car, I mean, look how close people were. I mean, this could have gone so much worse, where, a child or a family could have gotten hurt.
This crime occurred during an influx of teens in what some people refer to on social media as teen takeovers.
Some people. He won't call it that. Some people call it a teen takeover. That's exactly what it is. Actually, it's a breach of peace. I'm going to say it again. Breach of peace is what that was.
The organizer of this link-up, as it was titled, urged people to bring umbrellas, water, not alcohol, and not guns. The flyer also mentioned no unsupervised minors.
They're all unsupervised minors.
We are aware of the planned event and had manpower allocated.
That's not true. That's not true. Because if they had the proper manpower, like we did back in the day, they wouldn't have gotten out of control, and they wouldn't have had to call the sheriff's department and another police department to help them.
Mandated monitored the social media posts for the event in the days leading up to it.
All right, let's go. I want to go to Bob. Here we go. Because I think it's funny what Bob has to say. He compares it to something.
Liability, but also it could be, we could look at child neglect charges. There could be a variety of charges.
They're not going to do anything. They're not going to charge anybody.
We can sit here and Monday morning quarterback this. Any questions?
Oh, yeah. We can Monday morning cornerback it. You know why, Sheriff? Because you guys did a bad job. And I've done those things. I'm part of the police department that and was part of a team that's what they're created for, was shit like that.
People are looking out their condo windows, they're taking video, and they're seeing this, they're seeing the delay. They did the best they could under those circumstances. But like Chief Walk said, you can always be better. You don't have to be sick to get better. And this wasn't sick, and it was one of those things where you had a whole lot of people, and I think the magnitude of it was unknown. When they said they were coming, but nobody said they were coming. And you can look at it, you ask questions about the number of people out there. Everybody has their estimates. It doesn't matter whether it was 600, 800, 1,000, and everybody's saying it was some different number. It doesn't matter. It went from 0 to a lot very fast.
Yeah. And if you had the intel that there was even an inkling, even if it was going to be 200 people, you should have had pre-positioned, pre-stationed things to prepare for that. And they didn't. That's why his agency got involved.
because they weren't doing stuff that we've seen in the past with something. Go back to the 2020 situation, especially down in St. Pete during the riots. They weren't throwing rocks. They weren't throwing bottles. They weren't breaking windows. They weren't doing anything other than being there.
Okay, and that's not true. Halfway through, there is a when they started calling for other agencies, in the police CADS menu, it says that they were throwing things at police officer. And he's talking about St. Pete Police Department, who dealt with some riots in 2020. And guess who was the chief of police in St. Pete at the time in 2020? Tony Holloway. Where did Tony Holloway come from? CPD. So he lost control down in St. Pete to the point where Bob had to take his guys down to St. Pete and help, and he got a brick thrown at him. Tony came from Clearwater, so he brought his mentality of Clearwater down to St. Pete, and then St. Pete had to suffer for it.
And then when the shooting happened, is when the melee happened. And some of that was people were running, and they were running from the cops, and they started doing different things. So, this is, they say sometimes just stuff happens, and this is one of those things. It was a perfect storm.
Perfect storm.
On their balconies and look at it and try and Monday morning quarterback it, but just because people are there, no law enforcement can just walk up to people that are on the sidewalk lawfully where they are and say, you all gotta leave or move on.
Believe it or not, Clearwater Police Department tells their officers to do that all the time.
So it is a balancing act, especially with the way they are acting. As far as the parents are concerned, these parents need to own it. They do need to be responsible for these kids. These are kids.
No, that's true.
15, 16 years old. I think the victim in this was 17, the shooter was 16. These are all kids. The parents know, a lot of them came over here by.
All right, I'm done listening to these dumbasses. So the main thing is that there was a lot of failures, okay? And based off of my experience working at Clearwater Police Department, I can tell you that Clearwater Police Department's focus, based off of what the city wants and what the chain of command wants, and that's not including Gandy. I think Gandy's trying to change the culture there. But while I worked at the agency, the main focus on Clearwater Beach was get as many open alcohol containers as you can. So a lot of these young cops are on the beach looking for that open alcohol, but they're not noticing hints of other things that can go wrong. There have been other people that have said it, have mentioned it, have pulled guns off of people, and they've been told, focus on that open alcohol. Open alcohol is important. We have to make sure there's no alcohol on Clearwater Beach. The focus is wrong. I can't remember what year it was, but when they first created the Clearwater Beach Walk team, it was a sergeant and 3 guys. And this was during a time where we were having a lot of beach blanket thefts. I mean, it was rampant. And so the sergeant in charge and one of the officers put out a little, you've seen the police warning signs, and it said, lock your valuables in your car, make sure your car's locked, right? And I remember driving down the causeway, going to work that morning and seeing it going, about time we put something like that, because I had just gotten back from my 2 weeks in the Naval Reserve annual training from Key West, and they had them all over Key West, both the sheriff's department and the police department, because they were having a problem, right? So I was like, oh, this is so smart. Drive to work, hanging out in the substation with my sergeant. My sergeant gets a phone call. Hey, get that sign off the road. I can't remember if it was someone from the police department or if it was Bill Horn, the city manager, but it came from Bill Horn. I just can't remember who called my sergeant, but it came from Bill Horn to turn the sign off and get it away. Why? Because he didn't want people to know that there's crime out there. That's the city's mentality. There's no crime on the beach, because if we admit that there's crime on the beach, people aren't going to want to come here. No, when you tell them to do what they should do, which is lock your valuables in your car and keep the car locked, they know that they're safe. And when you put more officers out there, they feel safe. But they've always had this issue with not acknowledging the type of crimes that are out there, focusing on open alcohol and just minor things, and not looking at the bigger picture that there is potential for violent crime on that beach. I remember when I first got hired, people used to joke that if you went to Clearwater Beach, you weren't being a real cop. You weren't going to investigate real crimes. I pulled drugs off that beach. I've pulled guns off that beach. I pulled over a freaking Latin king. I think he was like third or fourth in charge of the Latin Kings over in Tampa. We've done stops on freaking warlocks. I mean, don't tell me that there's no crime out in that beach, okay? And then I knew people that lived out there. I had a family member, several family members that lived out on Clearwater Beach. I got to know some of the players in the north end of the Clearwater Beach, the very rich folks that got to know me and would tell me things and give me intel about certain homes. This beach is like any beach in the country. It has the potential to have violent things happen. We can't keep reacting to these things. We have to be proactive. And honestly, I think there was a failure within the chain of command. I don't know if Intel did their job 100% and gave it to the chain of command, and the chain of command didn't do their job by passing up all the information properly, or did Intel slip? And when I say Intel, I'm using my mentality as a military person that if I say Intel failed, that means anywhere in the chain from the Intel officer all the way up. I'm not pointing out anybody specific. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here today, because of that. All right. Listen, if you don't like what I had to say, you think it's too much, I'm not here to make everybody happy. I'm here to point out some facts that I know. And I worked at that police department. I worked at beach. So I was pointing out things that I know on how we responded to things beforehand. Okay. If you like what I had to say, great. Awesome. I'm not here to make friends. I mean, I would like it. I would like to have more subscribers, but if I lose subscribers, I understand. If I gain subscribers, hey, that's great. But someone has to speak up. Someone has to say, hey, listen, not everything they're telling you is the truth. Okay. And again, those press conferences are scripted. They're scripted. He's reading from a script. And I guarantee he believes everything that's on that piece of paper, and half the shit on that piece of paper is not the full truth. You're getting half the story. All right. So guys, if you like what you saw, great. Subscribe, tell your friends, hit the like button. I got some more videos coming. I know I've been gone a while and I apologize. But we're going to get kicking back up again. So other than that, I am out of here.